Welcome back, viewers. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can take your own application and integrate it with Relativity. That's probably enough for the title. Okay, so the question that I've been asked a couple of times, and I figured that's worth making a video about, is this. Someone says, I created this application that does magic X, I don't know, whatever it does. Analyzes text, competes in analytics world, does something proprietary, right? So I build this application on my own, it works, it's great. But now I want to have people who use Relativity to take advantage of that functionality. How can I do that? How can I make it easier for Relativity users to use my magical engine? So there are three categories that I can think of how you can integrate that application with Relativity. However, there are two steps that people forget before they even get to integration. And they are extremely important, and I cannot stress enough how important they are. Step number one, learn Relativity. And this is the biggest mistake developers make. They say like, well, I built this application, I just want to integrate it. It should be easy, but it's not. Relativity is not an easy to use application, and it's also not easy to understand. In fact, if you're a programmer, it's easier to understand because it's built on objects and so on. But learn Relativity. That, I say, is the most important thing, because that's how you'll know what you're integrating it into, in which area of Relativity it needs to be integrated, and how the user experience is going to be like, and so on. And then the second thing you need is you need to actually get Relativity. So you need to have access to Relativity environment before you go into integrate your application into it. Again, you need to test what it's going to look like. You can't just write sort of calls to SQL and assume that you're going to be done, right? You need to have that environment. You need to use it. You can use someone else's Relativity. You can partner up with a vendor. The best way, of course, is to get a developer license with Relativity. So they'll give you a virtual machine that you can install on your computer, and you can test as much as you want. You're not going to break anything. You have access to the back end, front end, everywhere. So those are the two things you should do before you get started. Learn Relativity and get Relativity, right? Now, there is a reason why I'm indoors today, by the way. The weather's terrible, and I want to show you things in the computer. So let me show you the three ways that we can take an application and integrate it into Relativity. And the first way is going to be built into Relativity. And again, this is what I call it. There are no three ways. This is just what I came up with, three general categories. So integrate into Relativity. So here I have an application that I created. This is Batch Guru. And if you look at it, it's indistinguishable from other components that were created by Relativity, right? So if I'm looking at these menus here and here, and I look at Batch Guru, it has completely same look and feel as rest of the Relativity. There is no way to like say, oh, Nikolai created this and not Relativity. So this is fully integrated. The user interface is built inside Relativity, and the logic that runs is based on agents that run, again, inside Relativity environment on agent servers. So there are no other servers or anywhere else it needs to connect to. This application lives completely inside Relativity. So it's you get the best look and feel, and you get to scale your application using agents. So you can add more or less agents. Will scale up or down the processing capacity of the application. So that's kind of one way you can do it. Of course, it's more, I would say, more difficult because you have to rebuild your user interface. You have to deeply integrate with all the APIs and everything. But this probably gives the user best experience as far as how it looks. Now the second way, I don't actually have example here, but you can think of brain space, right? And what you can do is build a connector. Brain space as a connector that lives inside relativity. So it's not a full application, but just a little piece that is responsible for sending data from relativity to brain space server and pulling it back. So the advantage of that is you have to write less code inside the relativity environment, right? Less talking with the, less dealing with proprietary or learning new APIs and being dependent on them. You just have to create that data transfer component, and then your application is going to live somewhere else and still keep all your already built user interface and functionality and so on. The third way is, well, of course, it's going to be write a desktop application that, the users will have to import either a DAT file or something like that, which is the least convenient way. But then you can take the data and import and export it out. And then you can also do what I've done here in my message crawler. I created very light integration where I call relativity safe search here. And what I can do is put relativity as information. And now I can pull some of the components or some data from relativity into my application. So nothing in this application was built inside relativity. Everything is inside my desktop app with Windows Forms, fast, responsive, the way I personally like it. And then when it needs to, it can pull data from relativity. So again, it's similar to a connector, but generally speaking, this is a standalone application, and user does need to go into your application in order to use it. It's not like a seamless integration where everything happens inside relativity. So that's my opinion on how developers can take their already built application and try to integrate with relativity. Of course, this is just my opinion, how I feel about it. There are probably many more ways of doing it and slicing and dicing data and integration and so on. But that's kind of how I break it up into these three categories. Anyway, make sure you learn relativity and make sure you get relativity before you try to program for relativity. I cannot stress that enough. All right, anyway, questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube, and I will see you next time.